Welcome to the MMHP and the 989, channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history.
Hello, Michigan music lovers. This is Scott Baker. I want to welcome you to the Michigan Music History Podcast. I am flanked by Michigan music royalty. To the left, Dr. J. To the right, Sir Fred. We cut from just around the block of the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame in Bay City, Michigan, here at Studio 163 in Essexville. And now it's time to grab a favorite beverage, hit the cruise, and take a trip back with us through Michigan's rich music history.
This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Electric Kitsch, located at 2106 Kosciuszko Avenue in Bay City, Michigan. And now, here's your host, Scott Baker.
And here we are back for part 2 with Donny Brown. We're thankful for him to come to Essexville to Studio 163 and share all these wonderful memories along with us. In this episode, we're going to jump right in at the self-titled Verve Pipe album that followed Villains, and get a little bit behind the writing genesis of Donny Brown and Brian Vander Ark and how they came together, and a few finer points of the productions that went into the following Verve Pipe records, into the children albums down the line, and eventually to Donny's solo career right now, where he is being able to pretty much do anything he wants. We want to thank him for his big heart, for all the music that he's put into our Michigan music bed, as well as the society itself, and he gives back as much as he puts out, and we are grateful for him. So dive right in, part 2 with Donny Brown.
Did you feel a tremendous amount of pressure, though, for the follow-up?
Yes,
after that
of course.
Kind of
that was awful.
Yeah.
But the truth is, and this is speaking for myself only, I was physically and mentally exhausted because the timing of the freshman was wrong. We first off, we played our way out to San Francisco to make the record with Jerry Harrison. Then we made the record with Jerry Harrison, and then we played our asses back to Michigan. So I mean, it's like tour, record, tour across, and I haven't been to Alaska and I haven't been to North Dakota, but I have played music in every other state, numerous places, just driving in a damn van and kicking our own asses, because it's like, Texas is a huge state. And it's like, if you're going to play in Texas, make sure that the next gig just isn't in Texas. Know how many miles it is, because it's like, we just drove 11 hours to get to this gig. And it's just like, and we're still in Texas.
Yes,
So we've done that stupid shit,
Well, you were saying when he asked you about songwriting, and you said you were busy selling and doing business side of things. You also told earlier that egos and stuff of the recording. Was there any cracks starting to appear in the mirror even back then?
Oh, I think personal relationships and music relationships are wrought with that, because it's a creative medium. It's just like one person loves this and knows why they love it and feels wholeheartedly 1,000% that this is the way to go, and the other person may feel the exact opposite. And Brian and I were those two guys. Okay. It just was that way. But I always felt best when he had written a song that I dug and that I loved, and that he let me do something with it. So that was where it was like, it was good. What
was the first one of those that you guys wrote?
Oh gosh,
that you're like still to this day.
I would be on Pop Smear.
Yeah.
And I'd have to go listen to it.
Well, Honest was a
co-write. Yeah, that was a good one. And that was a good co-write, because it was like, okay, now we're going to have a guy play percussion on this. Now we're going to have AJ had a great nylon string guitar that he could play the shit out of and play like pseudo flamenco stuff on. It's like, well, let's write a song that has that in there. He does that, and he does it well, and it sounds cool. Let's just do it, So, but that was then, that was the time of that. Oh,
I was just curious that when you two did come together with a smile at the end of the day, was there quite a few of those in the canon these years?
Yeah.
Okay.
We took with the good with the bad, but we were definitely each other's Um, we definitely,
A yin and a yang. And
yeah, exactly. We were,
Yeah.
we were.
Well, that led us to the follow-up, which, Gary, you were asking about.
Well, yeah, that's the one that was produced by was it Michael Beinhorn?
Michael Beinhorn, yeah,
from Soundgarden.
yeah. The second one.
How did was the label direct you toward them, or did you make the contact with them? How did that work?
We had talked with Jack Joseph Puig about making the record, and Jack Joseph Puig didn't think we had the songs. I remember that. Jack Joseph Puig flew to Michigan and came to the studio that we were working out of called Station C in Grand Rapids, where we recorded Pop Smear. And he came there and we played him the new record. We played it physically. He got behind the board, dialed things in, and we played him all the stuff that we had for the record. And he didn't think we had the songs. He didn't think we had a song that was worthy of a band that was a platinum band at the time. And that, at least that's my recollection of it. And so we were like, okay, well, there were some egos at play, and some people saying he's wrong, and we'll find the producer who believes in these songs, and so it started a new search, and of course the whole time we were writing, but hindsight, I wish we had. If what I was saying earlier about the timing of the Freshmen, the hard part about that is we toured and toured and toured. And then we release this record and we go out on tour and we release 2 singles and make 2 videos, and we tour as an opening act and play 2 summers of radio festivals, where you play at this time, and then you go to the radio station in the morning and do their drive time shit and things like that. All these things that just physically and mentally exhaust you. And then you have to, and you're sleeping on a bus or you're sleeping in a van, and you're trying to keep your sanity, being away from people that you love. And by the time the second record rolled around, I remember just being brain dead, just like walking around in a fog, being able to go up and play a great show because that was in me, and it was just like I could turn it on, bam, crush the songs. But everything else, I was just like a zombie. And then we're supposed to make our second record. We had really we were on the road 2 years, for between 96 and 97. I was in Michigan for 17 days.
Wow.
And I slept in my own bed 11 days out of 2 years. And I mean, that's just exhausting.
Man, I imagine RCA is probably putting a little bit of pressure on you guys for that new record.
It was awful.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't anything that we didn't already have put on ourselves. But I mean, hearing Black Hole Sun made me get a hard on for Michael Beinhorn. But after meeting him and working with him a little bit, that was gone forever. I just didn't. I had hope, but I didn't have the belief in the guy that some other people did. But that's just me personally.
Right. And then the record doesn't do what everybody hoped it would do.
Yeah, that was a very hard time.
Yeah.
And that was a bitter pill to swallow because, here we were, this band, and as we toured with that tour, the record sales just kept decreasing because it was just like, well, and so the crowds were getting thinner and thinner, and we were booked at the place that we were headlining, coming through and playing the Fillmore or whatever it was in Rochester, New York. And we're going back and we're booked at the Fillmore for the second record, but the ticket sales are so bad that we got to move back down to the place that we played before we had a hit. And then the record sales are so bad that they moved us down to a smaller place. And it's just like, people would come up and they'd be like, I couldn't believe we saw you here. And it's like, well, that's the fucking reality. That's the reality of it. So I know that taste. I know the reality of that. And I know what all of that, I know the good and the bad, and that's just the way it is. I mean,
Well, that kind of brings me to what is really a favorite record of mine,
yeah,
and that's the next one. And the one you did with Adam Schleshinger, who
I love that record.
I think he's an absolute genius, this guy.
God rest his soul.
Oh, yeah, what a loss to COVID-19 he
I
was.
agree.
Oh, my
I
God.
agree. And Adam, but the beautiful thing about that for me personally is that Adam was willing to kind of like listen to my songs and work with them, work with me, and get Brian to work with them. And I think that record is a good record because of that.
Yeah. I mean, you really changed your sound on that
Well,
in a lot of ways. You know, it was.
If you listen to Pop Smear and then you listen to the first record for RCA, all of a sudden we're just a fucking arena rock band. From Pop Smear to that, we are an arena rock band. And then The Freshman is a great track. The recut of it is a great track, but it isn't just an arena rock track. It's just a great track. And so that was just Jerry Harrison kind of taking us in that direction. I think he was plugging us into that because he had just had live Throwing Copper go 6 times platinum. And so he was like, this is how I did it with them. Let's do that way with the Verve Pipe.
Right.
We don't need any harmonies. Don't do any harmonies because it doesn't need it.
So there's 3 versions of the Freshman out there.
Yeah,
There's,
there are. Yeah.
Okay, there's the original on the first album, then Harrison's, and then the remix with Jack Joseph Puig, which is the one you prefer out of the 2 later on ones?
Out of the 3.
Out of the 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I that was great the way it went down. We walked into the studio, and here you walk into the studio and it's like, I remember seeing pictures of the Beach Boys around the microphone and the baffling on the wall being behind them and seeing that. And it's just like, okay, that looks like a recording studio. And I turned the corner to walk in to record The Freshman, and there's that baffling on the wall, that exact baffling on the wall. And I went, this is where I'm standing, where the Beach Boys had that microphone, and they were recording Help Me Rhonda, and it's just like, holy shit. And so I immediately was just like, oh, and then the guy came in, and I talked with Alan Sides, the owner of Ocean Way, and he's like, well, Sinatra liked this room too. It's just like, oh, okay, let's pile it on a little bit. So we were just in that room, and we had toured, and we had, we were in a good place. We got to LA, and we got some good sleep, and we went into the studio, and we only had 3 days in the studio. And I remember we started working on this version that we had worked up live, which had more drive and more up and more down. And I thought it was much, much better. And we were working on it. And when we walked into the studio, in one little area of the studio is this group of keyboards. It's just a wall of keyboards. Like there's a B3, there's 2 or 3 Mellotrons, there's an Optagon, all of these funky Rhodes, Wurlitzers, all of these things, just keyboards everywhere. And in another area is like all of these guitar amps, like boutique guitar amp from the 60s that the Ventures played, and this and this and this and this, and all of this rock and roll just around you, right? And Doug Corella, our keyboardist, walks up to this Mellotron and starts playing Nights in White Satin. And I'm just like, that sounds exactly like Nights in White Satin. I'm like, I can't believe. I'm like, that sounds so much just like the record. And Jack Joseph Puig says that's because that is the Mellotron from Nights in White Satin. And then he opens it up. And I don't know if you know what a Mellotron is. It's the first real sampling keyboard.
Right.
Because what it did is it had a cassette head for every single key. So 88, or, it wasn't a full keyboard. So like a 49 key keyboard with 49 cassette heads. And when you would press the key down, it would engage the head to come up and play this piece of tape that had a sound recorded on it. And so they would record a sound on it. And in that case, it was like these strings. And then they would kind of warp it and make it its own thing. So like, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, Nights in White Satin, na-da-da-da-da-da-da. That's all Mellotron. And we're standing there with the exact Mellotron that's played on the record. And our keyboardist is drooling, and he's like, I'm sampling this thing. So he gets out his gizmo and samples, makes the sound for it. So we're the third day of the freshman. We're recording the freshman, and we're like, this is it. This is the last day. We got it. This is whatever we end with today is the record. And we had already played the record. We'd already recorded it 60 times. Just playing different thing, trying different thing here, or try a different thing here. Let's play it from here. Let's speed it up. Let's slow it down. Let's do this. And I felt great about where the drums had gone. Like the sound that I got out of the drum set, I changed to a bigger bass drum. I did this and did that. And it's just like, okay, I'm feeling this. I really feel it. But there's not something immediate. It's like, it still needs something. And so we got to like the second pre-chorus of the song, and Doug Corella, our keyboardist, plays the Mellotron patch from Moody Blues and goes, da, with his keyboard, something that you can't do on a Mellotron, but that you can do if you sample it and move it onto a keyboard that's got a flywheel that will change pitch. And he started playing that, and AJ started playing it on guitar, and Jack Joseph Puig gets on the talkback. Whoa, 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 whoa. Do that when it comes to that time. But Doug, you take it first. AJ, you creep in. All right, let's take it. And then the second time it comes through the chorus, everybody in the band immediately felt the song start to go, oh, here it goes. Here we go. Here we go. And we played it 3 times. And the third time, Jack Joseph Puig got on the mic and said, that's it, guys. Record's made. So the record that is the freshman is my third performance, a live single track, no editing. It's AJ is same, Doug Corella same, Brad same. It's all of that. The only thing that was overdubbed was Brian's guitar at the front and his vocal. So it's a take. It's a take. So
in Ocean Way.
Yeah, at Ocean Way with Jack Joseph Puig. And I remember we finished it, and they brought in this independent radio programmer who was very much a huge Verve Pipe fan. And she'd come out to numerous songs, and she loved the freshman. And she was like, oh, they're redoing it, thank God. And she came in and she heard it, and she's just bawling her eyes out, and she's like, it's a hit. So we were like, oh, great. She says it's a hit. And she was right. Yeah. But just the power of that, where somebody stumbles on just to the right idea at the right time. And that's what Doug Corella did, playing that little riff. And if you listen to the record, it's like when he does that, now you hear it differently. You're going to go, that's the Knights and Knights.
I know.
and people don't know that, but Doug and I just still laugh about it to this day. It's just like, yeah, that was a fun thing.
That's cool. That's a great story. My first interview with you guys, when you guys were coming to Saginaw back home for your homecoming show.
Yeah.
And I was trying to get a hold of you, and for some reason you were busy, but Doug got on the phone. I didn't know who Doug was out of all of them.
Yeah,
and I'm like, we had the greatest conversation.
He's a good cat.
Yeah. And afterwards, he wanted to make sure that we got to hang out, and I got to finally meet you face to face that night. But, before everything else kept on rolling, and I'm like, what a time of your life.
Yeah, man. It was awesome.
You guys, Gary was talking about Underneath and getting into that, and did you find some relaxation between the Frog album and that album? Did you guys finally get to? Did you get your head clear?
I mean, really, honestly, when you get smacked down like that, and it's like, it got to the point where it was like, well, we've experienced highs, and we've really experienced some lows. Let's just get back to playing music, and I think that did good things for the band and good things for the egos,
Awesome.
And so I think the record was better because of that. So,
you got some great reviews.
There were some good reviews.
Yeah.
It was an odd time. It was an odd time to be making records for RCA, because at the same time they had this band called The Strokes that everybody in RCA, I would go to the building in BMG in New York City, and everybody would be talking about The Strokes. And I'd be like, The Strokes? I haven't heard them. And then, the first thing that they give me is this, last night, she says, I'm like, this sounds like kind of garage rock, but it's grooving and it sounds new in this day and age. So I think they're right. I think RCA is right to go down this road with these people. They were the epitome of cool, and the Strokes were huge.
Oh yeah,
worldwide. Yeah.
That was a different period altogether from from Villains. I mean, that era.
Yeah, but then here we are, that band who made Villains, and we made Underneath. But Underneath has got some great songs on it.
It's a fabulous record.
I really like Brian's songs on it. I like Only Words especially, and I like Underneath, the title track.
Mm-hmm. I always liked your song "Is It Worth It."
Yeah,
it's just a great groove.
I like that tune. That was just like a little mood piece, and we did that. Like with all the lights off, and just like with me playing this hypnotic drum thing, and I had written all these words on a sheet, and I'm like, Brian, look at the sheet, and whatever feels right to sing to you, sing. And so that's kind of how it came out. That was a good time.
Awesome. That was a fabulous record. Did the tour? How was the tour for that?
Underneath?
Yeah.
Underneath, the tour was pretty low key. Yeah, because at the time, the Verve Pipe just didn't have a place on radio.
Right.
And the sound of radio was changing. It was Limp Bizkit into the Strokes. So it was like, if you're playing harder rock, you're going to be Limp Bizkit and Incubus on this, and Deftones, 93, the 93 threes of America.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're playing more the 89 X's of Detroit, then the Strokes are your darling.
Yeah.
And the Verve Pipe were like, well, we're writing rock and roll tunes, but they're kind of in between there, and they're a little more introspective. At least that album was. And
you guys were vets at that point too, like shaping and creating your own territory, which completely keeps you separate from the hot spots, I suppose.
I don't know. The other thing is that we were already older cats. Yeah. So it's just not like we had like a young thing going for us, a teen heartthrob or anything like that, or that we didn't have enough of the marketing side of it to that. I don't know. I haven't thought about it too much, because really, when it comes to any kind of music, I just take the music for what the music is, and it's odd to me because I trust that in myself. And so when I listen to Underneath, I can hear the beauty of it. And when I listen to the second Frog record, it doesn't move me, because not because of I know what went into it and how much of it didn't happen, but because it just doesn't move me. So I mean,
just the feels.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel right. So
I remember picking up a Spin magazine. I think I was reading the cover story, and I can't remember who it was. And I got to a part, and here's you guys, and was it in a bar in New York, throwing food or spitting food or something?
Yeah, Chinese place. I remember that.
And I was like, whoa, this is pretty cool. I mean, out of the left field, here's Verve Pipe and Spin. It was pretty cool to see that.
Yeah, that was odd. I mean, at the time, Spin was the harbinger of cool, Yeah.
They were like the Pitchfork of the time period.
Exactly. Thank you.
Now going on, man, towards the end of your tenure with the Verve Pipe, you did the first the album following Underneath. Was that the first Kids record?
Yes. Yep. We did that, and I recorded a lot of that at my house in Lansing.
Did you guys kind of take it back to the?
No. Here's how that happened. We got approached by a gentleman, a friend of mine by the name of Mark Miller, who has Harvest Studios in Lansing, and they do jingles and they do television and they do commercials, and but they got approached from Meyer to make a kids record, and they were like, listen, can you round up some musicians to make a kids record on behalf of Meyer for St. Jude Children's Hospital or something like that. So Meyer is like, okay, we'll make the record and everything. You donate your song to it. And so I was talking to Mark Miller about it, and at the time, Brian was singing a jingle for him or something, and I was playing drums on another jingle or something for him. And he talked to both of us about it. And we both went home, and I wrote 3 songs, and Brian wrote 3 songs. And we got together and we played these songs for each other, and Mark was there. And I think it was Mark who just said, Jesus, man, you've got a great kids record. You got half of a kids record. You got 3/4 of a kids record here. That's better than any of the kids' music out there. And we were just being stupid. You know, I mean, songs with, you know, lyrics like, you know, be part of the band, but don't get a manager just yet. Singing that to kids, you know, it's just like, I meant that. I wrote that, but it's just like, our manager was like, don't sing that. I'm like, no, that's the point of the whole thing. The whole point of the whole thing is because I would meet these kids who were playing at the Red Eye Coffee Shop in Saginaw, you know, and with 2 guitars, and they'd be talking about, well, our manager says to do this. And it's just like, your fucking manager? It's just like, you know, you just got done making me a cup of coffee. You can barely play the guitar, and you got a manager. And it's just like, so I did. That's how I wrote that song.
That record is fabulous, though.
I love that record.
That took a lot of balls. That took a different direction. That is the alternative of the alternative, is bringing out this reality and having fun.
Well, you know, Brian had kids. I had nieces and nephews. Other guys in the band had kids, and we were just like, you know, you realize the people that they make you just being around them. When you're around a kid that makes you happy, you kind of become a kid again, and you get in tune with that, and you put your rock and roll self into it, and that's how I did it. I mean, I think some of the silliest songs on the record are mine. Serial is a song, and that Serial is about the tour bus, just because we'd be on the road, and I'd walk into the back room, and there would be a bottle of vodka and 2 bottles of red wine, a bottle of Jack Daniels, 12-pack of Corona, 12-pack of St. Pauli Girl, and everything. And it'd go on the bus, you know. And if what we didn't party with and drink went on the bus. And it's just like, I didn't give a shit about any of that. I didn't need to get too fucked up. But God damn it, there better be some cereal on the tour bus, because our tour bus isn't pulling over. And somebody better have taken the milk out of the back room so I can have me 3 bowls of cereal while we're driving out of Omaha, because that's going to make me happier than all of this booze and all those people that that were in our back room that I don't know. Yeah. So, I mean, that's how I wrote that song. I love my cereal, morning, noon, and night.
Oh, my kids, I had my twins right just before the album came out, and we took them to the State Theater to see you guys and hang, and they were maybe 2 or 3 at that, and I'm like, that was so catchy, so groovy, such a fun time, and I'm like, the timing was so perfect. Yeah,
if you don't know that record, you should listen to it. The first Verve Pipe Kids record, family album. It's got I don't know. I produced it, and I recorded a lot of it, and I don't know. It was just one of those where we were hitting on all cylinders, and anytime I brought somebody in to play music, they kind of got it right away. They just put themselves in that mindset, and it served its purpose. It was great.
Was Randy on board for that album? Randy you finally had brought Randy into the Verve Pipe.
Yep.
By then. Yep. And AJ was not in the band at that point,
No,
right?
AJ was in the band up to then. Yeah. And then just, I think we wanted to make the record, and it was just going to take him away too much, the kids record, because when you're making a record and there isn't a budget for it, it's like, hey man, we need you to do this, but you got to come and just do it for the sake of doing it. And he's like, well, right now I got to pay this and this and this and this and this, so I can't do it. So
that's how that all kind of crumbled outward.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm getting a little better feel of how the business end of it came dribbling down at that point. By the end of playing these kid songs and taking this out, and I just remember how much fun it felt to the area, and it felt to the vibe, and seeing you guys smile, the shows.
Yeah.
What was the next step for you? What direction were you thinking, or what was in your mind at the time?
I mean, I really wasn't thinking of anything.
Mm-hmm.
We were still getting gigs and playing here and there, and I didn't feel like we were writing anything that was defining us. And if Brian was writing something, he was probably keeping it for himself. I don't know, but he was out making his solo records, and that's fine with me. And during that time, I was like, well, I'll keep my songs for myself. So, I mean, I had songs that I had written for Underneath that are on my first EP.
Such a good record.
Lucky Number, I wrote that for the Verve Pipe. And Brian and our A&R guy both listened to it and said, it's not a Verve Pipe song. I was like, you're out of your fucking mind. It'd be a great Verve Pipe song.
Your first EP.
Yeah.
I mean, all of your records, but that, I remember when I finally got a copy and you can't let that leave your listening. It's like you want that spinning. The songs are so solid now.
Oh, I'm glad you say that. I'm glad you think so. Well, this song I also wrote a song called The Driving Song that's on that record. And I wrote that for the Verve Pipe, but when I recorded it, when I did my version of it, I was like, no, that doesn't sound like a Verve Pipe song. So I sent it to our manager. You know, when we would write songs, everybody in the band would send them to our management and our management office and our A&R guy, and just like try the waters. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, take a listen to this. What do you think? You know, so I would send it to our A&R guy at RCA, and I would send it to our manager, and I remember sending out those songs and people telling me kind of what I already felt was like, yeah, that could be a Verve Pipe song. No, that isn't. That I can't hear that style or however you're doing that. And so this brings me around to what we were talking about before. I'll just go into it. In 2002, my buddy was booking the State Theater in Kalamazoo, and he was the right-hand man to the guy who was booking all of the acts in Kalamazoo, like all the main acts that came to Wing Stadium and everything. Anyway, he called me up and he said, "What are you doing October 4th?" And I'm like, "I don't know." "Why?" He said, "Well, you got to play a song before with Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull." I was like, "What? What?" And he's like, "Yeah. You know, I have your demos that you sent to the office, to the management office." He says, "I've got those." And they were having a radio contest at WRKR in Kalamazoo. And it was like, local artists submit your song, and Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull will pick the winner who gets to come up on stage and play with them. And he's like, I submitted your song. I was like, you prick. Yeah, I'm like, I play drums. I hacked through the guitar on this, you know, on the demo, and it was a demo. It was just me on a 4-track recorder, hacking through this on the guitar, and he's like, "Yeah, well, I sent it in, and Ian Anderson chose it, so you're playing with Ian Anderson." So my very first ever gig with me standing out front playing guitar was in front of Ian Anderson. Ever. I never, ever had sat there with a guitar around me and played guitar. With the exception of once we played at a dive bar in Knoxville, Tennessee on our tour back from making the first record for RCA. And there was nobody there. And they set my drums up underneath this stairwell. And so I sat on the drum chair and I sang Desperado a half step off deliberately. I played it on guitar and sang it a half step off. And there was nobody there. I did that just to put a grin on everybody in our crew and band's face.
Well, we're going to invite our radio personalities back to the stage now. And they're nice fellas, really. Hey. We're going to also invite onto the stage a local musician. We're going to play backing group for a while. So we should, without any further ado,
I don't think we should do it all.
We shouldn't do it all. It's not unless we really mean it. We have a local fella by the name of Donny Brown. Is he known to you? Ever heard of Donny Brown?
Absolutely.
You know Donny Brown.
From the Verve Pipe, ladies and gentlemen.
Right. Yes.
Very successful. Hometown boys done good.
Donnie, come over here.
Songwriter.
Hi, Donnie. Donnie sent us a song last week, which I have to say, listening to a lot of people that send us these things, our musical guests during this tour, some of them are, just kind of a little basic, a little bit untutored, but Donnie has a really skillful piece of music, which he's going to sound great. We're going to be struggling to keep up with him, but it's a fabulous thing. We had a little practice at it earlier. And Donnie, what is the song? Because it's called Driving Song, curiously, the name of a Jethro Tull song earlier, but nothing to do with it. But how did the song come about?
Well, it came about like almost all of my songs, solitary in the basement in Lansing, Michigan, where I write. And, yay, Lansing. And when I was writing music for the Verve Pipe, and this one seemed a little left of center for our band, but I liked it nonetheless. And I have to say that your band is fantastic in sound check.
Great.
If they can make me sound great, they're quite good. So.
Yeah, because the interesting thing is Donnie is actually a drummer, and yet he plays guitar and writes songs and knows some quite difficult chords, which for a drummer is sort of unusual.
I don't know. Well, thank you. I didn't invent the chords.
Now that I think of it, Phil Collins, of course, is a drummer who also, sings and writes music and has a hairstyle somewhat similar to ours.
Thank you.
So, Donnie, we'll get up there and do this thing.
My pleasure.
It's a piece called Driving Song. And we'll hope we can do him justice. Here we go. Donnie has a borrowed guitar because the one that he borrowed from somebody else in Lansing, Michigan didn't work too well, so he's borrowing Kit's guitar. And we'll see how this goes. So. Yeah, but just let me plug in. Right.
We all stumble through life's little funny race. The typical challenges we all face. The knot in the shoelace you cannot tie. Oh! In a rush to get history underway, remember that the world wasn't built in a day. Wherever you're going, you'll get there in time. So why don't we take to the open road? Let the highway lighten our heavy load. Put all our differences aside. Get behind the wheel and drive. I'll come along for the ride. Slow the pace and search for your happiness. We're all under construction from the very first breath. The breaths become smiles, and smiles become tears. So grab the wheel and I'll take the open road. Let the highway lighten our heavy load. Show me the harmony and words to the sound of the song on the radio. Let me get behind the wheel and try. You come along for the Let the highway lighten our heavy load. We can lay back and cruise to the sound of the same FM stereo. Merrily moving with nowhere to go. And get behind the wheel and drive. I'll come along for the ride.
band? Was that fantastic or what?
A really nice song. Good stuff.
Donny Brown.
Well, thank you.
How about that?
Thank you so much. Thank you again.
This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Electric Kitsch, located at 2106 Kosciuszko Avenue in Bay City, Michigan. They offer new and used records, including local to Michigan original vinyl and CDs, as well as clothing, electronic equipment, funky household items, music gear, and stringed instrument repair. You can find them on the web or call 989-402-1411.
Yeah, I love that. I love that show.
Didn't Ian make a comment about you guys had the same haircut?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I've got that. You know, Ian introduced me and said, you know, he's said something along the lines of, well, we get a lot of songs submitted and some of them are good and some of them are okay, but Donnie's given us something really difficult to work with and we're going to have a hard time keeping up with him. And I was like, oh, Jesus, Ian Anderson. But really, the beautiful thing about it, as soon as we started playing it in sound check, I just heard kind of where he was going with it and how he was playing it. And I was like, oh. So I just sat there and he's like, starts playing a little flute thing at the top. And I just look at Ian Anderson and instead of going up to sing when the verse comes in, I just look at Ian Anderson and I go, and I just take a step back and it's just like, you play the shit out of that flute over my song and make me sound good. God bless you, Ian Anderson. And he was a gracious man. I saw him at the Civic Center with Jethro Tull at the A Tour in 1980. They came through.
That was 80. That was 2002 though that you had this happen.
Yeah, the 2002. Yeah.
So wow, right around the Kids record time period.
No, Kids record was much later than that. 2009.
Was it later? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this was right after Underneath, and this was one of the songs that I didn't think should be submitted for Underneath, and so this guy sent it to Ian Anderson.
That's crazy because Larry McCray had that similar story where someone in Lansing sent one of his songs in for a contest.
Yeah.
And Phil Lesh picked out the winner to jam with him.
Yeah.
And it was Phil Lesh of the Dead, and he ends up on doing 2 Dead shows with him, or two Phil and Friends.
Yeah.
In New York, and because he won the contest, he's like said the same thing. Why'd you send that in there? What? And Larry won it.
Yeah. Well, that was a thrill.
That's so cool.
And what was really awesome is that some of the crew guys from the Verve Pipe were working with the sound company, and they had no idea that I was the guy who won the contest. And so I remember seeing them. One of the guys is a monitor guy, and he's got the monitor desk set to the side, and the other guy is working in front of house with Ian Anderson's guy. And I remember coming out to do the song, and they were just like, holy crap, Donnie's gonna sing a song. So and I pulled it off. I pulled it off well, and I definitely remember getting a standing ovation, and I'm not shitting when I say that. I did.
You were on your feet, Mike?
I was there.
Yeah.
So it was great. It was great, and I'll have to get you the recording of it.
Oh yeah, I love to hear that. Oh, that's so cool.
So you can hear me just like, oh my God, Donnie's trying to play the guitar. It's a hard guitar part to play because it's in 6/8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, and it's the rhythm of it is. That's
why Ian was saying it's rough to play.
But then you have to sing against that. So you have to play that, and then sing against it. So, and I hadn't,
your prog roots were coming out.
Yeah, exactly. I but you have to understand, I didn't have any experience with that. I barely could play guitar or just like sit there and kind of get through it. But so that's how that came about. So that was a thrill. But that takes me back to what we were talking about earlier, and when we were talking about this, about just loving music and loving records. I mean, like I remember looking at my Aqualung record and just saying, is that Ian Anderson or is that Aqualung on the cover?
Yeah.
Because they looked a little like... And my brother, went and saw Tull at the Masonic Temple and came back and told me all about it and gave me the Teacher or the Benefit record with Teacher on it. I'm just like, listen to this. And so I'm listening to these records as a kid, and here I am seeing this guy and seeing the flesh and blood that he is, standing here, watching him clean his glasses and put them back on and talk to me just about a song. And the whole time I'm just like, where are my brothers? My brothers need to be here with me, because they would crap themselves. They would appreciate this as much as I am. And when you do have somebody like that, when you have somebody who knows what the moment really means and what it means to you, that really exaggerates it to the point where that how you want to remember it. Oh, yeah. So when I got a recording of that, because it was live broadcast on WRKR, I got a live recording of it. I gave it to my brother Ron, and my brother Ron was just like, "You're kidding me! Holy Jesus!" So yeah. But that's really what I'm grateful for. The success of the Verve Pipe is that it's it's given me a chance to do these things and do those things, and I try to make sure that I play well enough to be worthy of them. So
your songwriting also really blossomed. I mean, you really get to take your songs out, and you're still doing that.
I hope this new record, I'm working on one right now, I hope that it continues at least in a pattern of showing some growth. Like, okay, I'm going a little that way or a little that way. That's what I want. And fortunately for me, all the people who I get to play with and who are, stellar talents, and I get, good friends who can mix things, and I've, like I said, I've made enough connections along the way that my stuff I know it's gonna sound good because they're able to work on it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You're leaving the Verve Pipe. Was that a little sad time period for you, or were you like, no, I'm on my way out?
Yeah, it was a ladder. It was like it had become kind of poisonous. It was just like something that I didn't feel good doing it anymore, and that was the hard part about it, because it's like I love playing music, but this is the antithesis of that. This is like it's hard to do. It's hard to play because I just don't enjoy this scene, and so I stepped out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now you've kind of come full circle with the local band. I see Jeff Wallakangas and yourself. You got a super group together playing music again out and about.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun because we just go back to songs that we love and just like, okay, we've got a 3-piece horn section now, so it's like there's nothing holding us back. We got a great keyboardist in my buddy Ricky Nallett from Lansing, and so it's like I can't throw anything at him that he can't play. And the same thing with our vocals. We've got enough of with a girl in the band, we can get anything that's incredibly high, she can sing, and if it's high enough for a guy, I can still hit it. And Jeff covers all the other things, and so we've got solid 3-part harmony. It's a solid band, and I've tried to keep it fun. So
you can tell from what I've seen on the Facebook of it so far, and Scotty Vandell and.
Oh gosh!
You guys got this firepower coming from every angle.
Yeah. Everybody's solid. Everybody's good, and everybody's solid. So,
did that band play on your Donny Brown EP?
No, some of the players do. Scott Vandell's on it, but at that time, I was making Mike Robertson's record with Andy Reid. I was making some records with Roscoe, Selly with Andy Reid. I had my own band from the previous, but it wasn't like I wasn't able to gig enough to like say, hey guys, this is all you need to do. I'm going to feed you. It was like, just like me, you got to play with 4 or 5 different people in order to make a living. So that you have enough opportunities often enough. And that's how that record got made, and just pieces and parts. And so I have all my friends are all over that record.
Yeah, that had I thought a real kind of a 60s vibe to it. It was very, there was that period in the 60s where with the Beach Boys and the Association and the Mamas and the Papas.
I love all of those bands.
Kind of sunny sound,
I love it.
and that
I love it.
came
Sunny
through in
California
that.
sound.
Yeah,
I thought it was super fresh for that time too. Really.
I'm glad you like it. It's some of it, just like anybody else who makes a record, you kind of like, you can hear their headspace at the time, and you, if my influences come out, which they always will, you're always going to hear something that harkens back to. I love that. I love those influences. Everything that you said, the association, Mamas and the Papas, and that 60s California pop,
right?
That has people aren't afraid to sing ba ba ba.
Yeah.
It's like
it's feel good music.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah. If it makes you feel good, do it.
What's been your highlight since you left the Verve Pipe? Give me something that's really stuck out. Like, man, I got to do this, and it's just up there with everything else.
Well, geez, going to Europe with Thornetta Davis was wonderful, because I felt like we just knocked it out of the park.
Mm-hmm.
Her husband is her percussionist, James, and we played our first gig opening for the Fabulous Thunderbirds in this place in Denmark, and our next gig was 4.5 hours away, and they had a bus ride, and we pull into the bus place, or we pull into the place, and it's a hockey arena, and James looked at me, and I'd only played one gig with him at that time, by that time, the night before, and he's like, "This is a big place, you better hit those drums," and I was like, "If you want me to hit the drums, I will hit the drums." And I don't think he knew what the Verve Pipe was about. I don't think he did, because I beat the living shit out of the drums with the Verve Pipe. So we came out and we started the Thornetta set, and we came out and I hit the drums like I did in the Verve Pipe, and James got his hands on the congas and he turns around, he's like, "Oh," and he's like, "Oh, it's on." And so I just gave him that kind of energy for 45 minutes just of a set, just straight through, just driving it. And at the end of it, he just came up and gave me a hug and just said, "Holy shit," he loved it. And so I'm looking forward to being able to play with Thornetta now that some dates are coming back,
Did anything get recorded from that tour?
No, not that I know of.
Not officially or anything, but maybe some of your own.
I don't know.
No.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know any of the promoters because of the European contacts, and because of me just being the drummer.
Right.
But I would be awesome if it were.
I'd like to hear that. It sounds some slamming stuff. She's so intense on her own too.
She's great. Yeah. She's great. She's got soul, man.
You have any stories you've never told from any of your eras that you were like, I'm sure you've got Verve Pipe stories are endless. I've heard of some of them, but something you've never told that you always kind of want, this is a good story someday.
Well, I mean,
that no one's really heard.
we were talking about Adam Schleshinger earlier. So, when the Verve Pipe went to Sausalito to record Villains, it's 1995. And Jerry Harrison flies down to Los Angeles. He takes a day off the studio. He's like, "Guys, I'm not going to be here Saturday. I got to fly down to LA. I'm meeting with Tom Hanks. He's got a new movie called that he's working on. And I'm going to meet with him about being the music director on it." So Jerry flies down, and the next day we come into the studio, and Jerry's there, and he's got a script, like big, thick script. And he's like, "This is the script for Tom Hanks' new movie, and he needs a song called That Thing You Do." He needs a song called That Thing You Do. And so Brian went and started writing for this movie. I went to my houseboat. We were staying on a houseboat in Sausalito on the bay. And I just started writing a song called That Thing You Do. And so I recorded this song, started recording it on my 4-track on the houseboat, right? And I'm just playing the guitar, hacking through. And the next week, Jerry says, "I got to go fly down to Los Angeles to meet with Tom Hanks again." And so I'm hopeful. I'm like, I'm going to finish this song and give him That Thing You Do. And I'm going to get a song in a movie. Jerry flies back and he's like, "Yeah, they already got a song. They already got a song called That Thing You Do, and it's awesome. I've heard it. It's awesome. And I am not getting the gig. Jerry's like, I'm not getting the gig, so you no longer have an in with Tom Hanks. It's like, okay. So I just had this song called That Thing You Do, you know? And then it turns around. Here we are about to make Underneath for RCA in 1999, 2000. And one of the guys who might produce it is Adam Schleshinger from Fountains of Wayne, who wrote That Thing You Do. And so we're sitting, I can't remember where, me and Adam and it's the other guys in the band. And I said to Adam, I'm like, you know, That Thing You Do is about the most perfect song ever written for a movie. I said, it couldn't be any better. I said, I wrote a song called That Thing You Do because, and I told him about Jerry going down. He's like, well, let me hear it, you know? And so I played him my version and he was like, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I'm like, nah, it's good, but it is not what yours is. So I was fortunate that he actually got to hear it. And then Andy Reid brought Mike Viola, who was the guy who sang That Thing You Do and did all the lead vocals for that whole movie. He was the voice of the guy in the Wonders. Andy Reid brings Mike Viola to play at the State Theater with him in Bay City. And then the second time he brings Mike Viola from Los Angeles, he asked me to play drums for him. So I'm playing with drums with Mike and I'm like, hey, Mike, here's my version of That Thing You Do that you sang for the movie That Thing You Do that I played for Adam, who wrote That Thing You Do with you. And here, listen to it. So I got to play it for these two guys. And that was just awesome. You know, I mean,
that's great.
It's just, you know, it, and I think that my version is decent. It's definitely not as great as Adam's.
That was, it was absolutely perfect.
It is.
For the time period they were trying to portray. Uh-huh. That guy was incredible. Did you ever watch that show that he wrote music for called My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend?
No, I didn't.
I'm not absolutely phenomenal.
I know. I heard that because, like, didn't the title character, wasn't she singing all the time, right?
Yes, and you know what? They would do these different skits and different style of music, and he would produce these great little songs.
You know,
I was just flabbergasted how talented he was.
He was incredibly talented. Here's how talented he was. I flew to New York when we were going to make our record with Adam, and I gave him my songs. I gave him maybe 10 songs, and he said to me straight out, "These 4 are just not happening." He's like, there's not enough to them. He's like, we can take the time and try to make something happen with them. But he said, but these 6 really are happening. He's like, let's blow these up. I was like, great. So that was all of my songs that went on underneath. I had, Happiness Is, Never Let You Down, Gotta Move On, Medicate Myself.
I Want All of You.
I Want All of You.
I love that one too. Yeah. That's a great song.
So anyway, I'm playing I Want All of You to Adam. And Adam says, you know what this needs? And I was like, what? And he said, it needs a Mick Jagger Rolling Stones moment. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's kind of like doing a Mick Jagger impersonation and starts going, and so I started playing the changes, and then when we got to the end of the chorus, he just started humming that, and I was like, I fucking love it. I love that. And so and so it's like, hey Adam, you just co-wrote a song with me. He came up with this Mick Jagger idea, and it's just like Waiting on a Friend, and it's just I was like, oh, those songs have vibe, and if you're gonna say that you want to take a little bit of that makes me feel that way about the Stones or something like that and put it into one of my songs, I couldn't be happier. So he was that guy. That's the guy he was. When we were making Underneath, Brian's brother didn't want to play some of the songs on the record. He didn't like them, and he left the band. And so Adam played bass. Adam just picked up the bass and knew the songs because we had been working on the songs with him, and started playing the bass, and my drums immediately just went whoosh, just got wide as a sponge, you know. Fred, you know what it's like when you're playing drums or you're playing a percussion thing with somebody who plays bass and opens up the groove. It makes what you're doing just swim. And that's what Adam did. His bass playing did that to my drumming on that record. And then I'd see him like start playing a guitar. He'd start playing the guitar and come up with a little idea, and he'd feed it to AJ. He's like, what if you did something like this? And AJ would go, to the moon with it and take off with it. But he was that guy. And then when we were making Underneath, I was sleeping at the studio. So they had a spare bedroom off of the studios. So I'd wake up and I'd come out into the hallway and go down to the lounge and make my coffee in the morning. And I heard this piano. They had a grand piano in one of the main rooms, this huge Steinway grand piano. And I heard this piano and I was just like, who the heck is here? They're just crushing these Bach etudes, these, practice exercises and just and just flying up and down the keyboards. And I'm just like, oh, this person can play. And I open up the door and it's fucking Adam Schleshinger.
Wow.
And that's his main instrument was piano.
Wow.
And I didn't know it.
Me neither.
And then we started working on like this song of mine called Gotta Move On. And I had written a loop, and he's like, okay, give me all the sounds from the loop. So instead of recording, I went backwards from recording this loop, and I took every single sound, all of these sounds, and I give them to Adam, and he puts them on a keyboard and goes, and then he's like, oh great, Donnie, play the drum groove. I start playing the drum groove. He starts going, and it's just this pattern on his fingers that he's just doing. And then he starts talking to the rest of us while this is going on, and I'm trying to hold the groove down, and he's just like playing, and I'm just like, you motherfucker. He was one of those guys.
Yeah.
And then and we went, and lastly about that record, we when we went in to mix it, we were working on a song of mine called Happiness Is, and I said, Adam, I've always hated the bass part. I said, I don't think the bass part moves enough. It isn't. I can hear the difference between the bass that you played and what the old guy did on this, and I want some of that fire of what you did. And so here we are mixing it. We're mixing it. The record's done. The tracks are all cut. And fortunately, the guy mixing it is a guy named Chris Shaw, who does all the Bob Dylan stuff. And he and Adam are great friends. And he just says to Adam, just go get your bass. And Adam, we were in New York City mixing it. Adam called up his wife at the time and said, hey, we're sending somebody by to pick up my bass. So that we sent a guy from the studio, take a cab over to Adam's house, grab his bass, bring it back. He brings the bass in, and while he is mixing the fucking song, Adam plays the bass part. That was awesome.
Oh man.
Wow.
Yeah. So there was only 3 of us who saw him play that bass part. Me, Adam, and Chris Shaw.
Damn.
We were the only ones in the room. And it was just awesome. And if you listen to it, it's just like, that's a live performance of him playing the bass part on a song that he did. And if you listen to the bass part, there's a lot of, like, he slides up the whole neck so that he has to get to his note at the right time. And he's just doing that, and it's just natural. He
just spewed music.
Yeah, he did. And he was extremely bright and extremely witty. So, like, if you listen to, I think he won an Emmy for the song that he wrote for the Tony Awards, where Neil Patrick Harris wrote Broadway, It's Not Just for Gays Anymore. Right. Adam wrote that song. Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of guy he was. He's going to write a song called It's Just Not for Gays Anymore.
Yeah, he did a lot of music on a lot of television shows that, are so different from what he did with you guys.
Yeah.
And what he did with the Fountains of Wayne or Tinted Windows, the groups that he was in, which I love all that stuff that he did as well too. And you guys, you and Andy Reid did a tribute song for him. We did. And that was from Interstate Managers, right?
Welcome Interstate Managers.
Right.
It's just a song that we both loved.
Yeah, it's a great tune.
We were fortunate. We, Adam and I stayed in touch, and Andy and I and his brother Jason were already huge Fountains of Wayne fans. Adam's band, Fountains of Wayne. And they were coming to Chicago, and they were playing at the Vic Theater. So we bought tickets, and I called Adam up, and I'm like, hey, man, I'm coming to your show tonight. He's like, well, come on back, hang out. You know, I was like, great, awesome. So before the show here, I'm taking Andy Reid and his brother back to see and hang with Fountains of Wayne and have a beer with them before they go up and play a show that we're going to enjoy thoroughly. And then after the show, you know, Adam dials me up and he's like, hey, we're going to go here. We're going to go here. Meet us over at this bar. So we go to this dive bar. And then I think Adam or I got a call from somebody who had worked with RCA, who was working with a band called The Darkness. And they had a hit with the, do you believe in a thing called love? I believe in a thing called love. And you know, and they were playing at the Double Door. So me and Fountains of Wayne and the Reed brothers all jump into these cabs and just like hightail it over to the Double Door to see The Darkness. And so here we are just getting hot and sweaty watching a rock show after we watched Fountains of Wayne rock show and just living, just having the time of our lives. Just a great night that I will never forget. You know?
Fantastic. Did you stay in touch with Adam all the way to the end?
I did.
Wonderful.
I did. You know?
What about like Jerry Harrison and Jack Joseph?
No, I no, not at all. Those guys, I mean, they're doing different things, and I think they're. I know Jack is more LA. Adam just being a New York, East Coast kind of guy. I related to that more.
Right on.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
one last story, and I remember you briefly touching on this with somebody, and it's been a thing that's always kind of left about. But what was the song or the album session where you were in New York for a week getting drum sounds, or 2 weeks or something? That's the story that's passed around sometimes.
That was the second record.
Okay, the Frog record.
Yeah, that was a Frog record. It was just ridiculous.
I remember you were fed up with it, and you were just working on.
Well, just like, I mean, if you're in a studio and it costs $3,000 a day,
that's the story. Yeah,
it's just like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, if you can't get a good drum sound in a $3,000 a day studio, what the hell are you doing? And it was so frustrating. It was so frustrating because here we had graduated to this. Now, you have to weigh that against everything that you've already done. Like for instance, we cut a song called Her Ornament at a place called, what was the name of it? On Green Street in New York City, an all analog studio. Gosh, man, the Magic Shop. Mm-hmm. So we went to the Magic Shop and we set up, got sounds, and tracked this song live. And that's this record that went on. I think it went on the Great Expectations soundtrack or something like that. And it ended up selling 500,000 copies. I got a gold record for it, you know. And we did that we did the creation, the changes, the sounds, and everything, the mix in a fucking day at a great studio in New York City. And I love the sound of it. Now here we are in the studio that cost, 3 times as much for the day just to be in it. And we're going to take a week to get a drum sound. And it was just like, but at the time, I was brain dead. Like I said, we had been through so much that I was just like listening to people and saying, now that we're this platinum selling band, I'm working with people who had worked with platinum selling bands, and I'm listening to you. So tell me, please help me. Tell me. And the truth is like, they can't tell you any better than you fucking know, But like I said, I was brain dead. So I was going along with it and trying to get a drum sound when I had a drum sound when I walked in the fucking door.
Did you ever get that drum sound?
No. In fact, that's one of the things. I can't listen to that record because I just listened to that and I'm like, it's all wrong. I listened to the sound of the drums and I'm just like, it doesn't sound anything like what I was hearing. They used too much room mic. If you listen to that sound, and you listen to the first Verve Pipe record for RCA and the second one, it's a world of difference. But this, once again, just hindsight,
Right.
Was that, did you get some Did you hear some funny anecdotes that you didn't know?
Oh, hell yeah.
All right, good.
Thank you, Donnie, for coming in, man.
It's been a pleasure.
I know we could do a whole session on great stories and that, but we'll save that for another day. And
all right.
You're the friendship and the love you have for our area, for Michigan music, for everything you've done, it's immeasurable. And I we appreciate that.
But think about it, it's fertile ground here. And we go back, you go back to Mystery Man from Dick Wagner, a song that I fell in love with, and then listen to the fact that I had the 45 from the Bob Seger System and Ramblin' Gamblin' Man, and back before he had the Silver Bullet Band, and you're listening to that, and everything after that, just the fact that Mick Furlow and his brother Tony and these guys who defined Saginaw music at one time, and I've had a great trajectory, a great time with everybody I played with, So I'm grateful.
You've touched our world, and you've touched the world of music. And
don't get sappy on me.
No, dude, Scott. That's Donnie. You know how I am. Big hugs after, my brother. But thank you so much, Donnie, for coming.
Well, here, let's talk about Rock-A-Rolla Records for a little bit, because that's the first time I ever walked in and saw Fred Reef like at a record store picking through record bins, and then I would go, and every once in a while I'd see you working at who was the guy who owned the record store on Hamilton Street? Pick? Me. Well, did you sell it to Pick?
No, after I closed my store, he moved in.
Okay. Well, then I didn't know that was your store. But I know that you knew Dick Rosemont and all these people who, all of the Ann Arbor people who had been playing and everything like that. And that was my first time going in and seeing records that I had never seen in a record store. Like I had gone to the T-Way and seen whatever there was at the time, and they would only have the things that were just like about to happen. It's like, okay, they've got Van Halen 1 sitting there, and because Van Halen's happening, but they don't have anything that before that. And I remember going to your store and seeing things that I had never seen, like and when at Pick's store too. Pick got me into ECM, the German label, with Pat Metheny's first records, and I started listening to that, and it's just like, those are pivotal records in your life because you're listening to something that you have never heard and never heard anything sound like that before. Those are the things that like will lead to those right and left turns that keep shit interesting, So what I'm saying, Fred, is I'm grateful that you had your store.
Thank you.
Yeah. Because I mean, how many musicians should be grateful for that? Just being able to go in and see music, listen to music. I remember walking into Rock-A-Rolla and saying, "What the hell is this?" to the guy behind the counter, and he said, "It's a Nigerian singer by the name of Sade. She's going to be huge." and I was like, he's like, "This is an advance, and I don't know what the record's going to be called, but we got this advance." And they're spinning this vinyl, and I'm listening to it, and I'm like, I have never heard anybody with a voice like that. If you think about it, right. The first time hearing Sade, it's like, what came before Sade?
You're right on.
You know what I mean?
You're hearing Smooth Operator, and it's so different from everything else.
It's just like, holy shit, what is this about? And that was the same thing with hearing Pat Metheny Group. Hearing Pat Metheny Group, it's like, God, these guys are all just monster players. And the only thing I could equate to it was Return to Forever, who my brother was way into Return to Forever and that kind of stuff. But anyway, I digress. I just wanted to say thanks, Fred.
My pleasure.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Donnie.
Yeah, thank you all.
We'll be in touch for some more.
Great, great, guys. Thank you.
Yep. The MMHP is hosted on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and our own Libsyn podcast site. You can also search MMHP989 on Facebook for up-to-the-minute information, as well as both Dr. J and Sir Fred's album picks of the week, posted every weekend. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, and the Electric Kitch at electrickitch.com.
This podcast wouldn't be here without special help from Studio 163's Alan Garcia, our podcast videographer and wingman, Mr. Mike Beatty, MMHP tagline specialist, Mr. Eddie Switek, and of course, Gary Johnson, Fred Reif, the Electric Kitch, and all of our special guests, and especially you listeners. We want to thank you.
You've been listening to the MMHP and the